And I think it's a crazy world we are living right now because construction of digital assets has become close to free, which means that and you and I have talked about this recently, which is all that we have been taught in engineering schools, which is about building things risk-free, making sure that we build them more durable. And in the world of software, think about security, think about scale, think about safety from day one, maintainability, modularity, all that good stuff. Really is moved to a later stage. The first thing is, let's just get something out. Who cares if it scales? Who cares if it's going to cost extra, if it's high risk? So
Aater and Ali. We have very long been discussing this idea that we are having these regular conversations about what the state and the future of tech services is. And we have these thoughts, these insights, and what is happening in the industry, but we're not doing enough to share what's happening with the outside world. So what we've decided is start sharing kind of some of these conversations that we're having. You will have to excuse us. The idea is for us to be having more of our natural conversations. And so please don't hold us to something extremely polished and scripted. What we want to share with you is more of our overall thoughts. But thank you for joining us. So, Aater, we had our AI hackathon yesterday, right?
yes.
And I think I want to discuss that hackathon. But first, why don't we actually, you have some interesting thoughts on why you wanted all of Vixul to join in on a hackathon. So why don't we start from there?
Sure. So I think, I've been kind of starting to recognize the wave that was heading towards us. And I think we started this conversation probably close to August or September of last year. While we have been using AI within Vixul, I think there are different levels of using AI. We had built a chatbot that was good, but what we had not been started doing was truly take advantage of vibe coding, building apps, building agents, and started going down that rabbit hole for myself, advice from somebody I really respect and trust. And I realized that for a company to become AI first or AI native, whichever word you want to use, it's actually, I think, a key tenet that everyone in the company needs to be able to vibe code and be able to understand what the possibilities are. Because if you don't know what's possible, it just doesn't click to you that this can be automated or that there can be an app for this. And I think it's a crazy world we are living right now because construction of digital assets has become close to free, which means that and you and I have talked about this recently, which is all that we have been taught in engineering schools, which is about building things risk-free, making sure that we build them more durable. And in the world of software, think about security, think about scale, think about safety from day one, maintainability, modularity, all that good stuff. Really is moved to a later stage. The first thing is, let's just get something out. Who cares if it scales? Who cares if it's going to cost extra, if it's high risk? So I think that was the idea, that with the new economics, making sure that our entire team understands what the new possibilities are and the new economics of when or when not to automate something. That was my main intention. And I did not really give enough credit to, I think I could name numerous individuals. I listened to many podcasts, read many blogs in my quest last year. This kept coming up again and again, that everyone needs to be coding. There's no exclusion. I wish I could remember the name of the exact podcast or the exact episode because it was such an impactful statement for me. But I think one of the things that was a turning point for me was, I think it was Jason Lemkins from SaaStr who said in one of his videos when he was being interviewed by maybe Lenny on Lenny's podcast, that even the front office manager knows how to code in our office. So I think for me was a turning point.
So actually, what you're saying, that reminded me of something. There used to be this joke about teenagers, kind of like there's an old lady whose job it is to copy things from one Excel sheet to another and sum up a whole bunch of numbers, and she uses a pocket calculator to sum up all the numbers and then puts the sum in the background. And he just goes in, automates her entire job, and says, hey, look, all you have to do now is copy this over here like this and put this over here. And the conversation that happened, what we did yesterday, it actually made me realize that all of us are those old grandmas that are not familiar with computers now. Because what is a computer and how you interact with it, that language has completely changed at this point.
I completely agree. I was giving a lecture in the graduate course, right, just a couple of days ago, Professor Yilpat's class. And Professor Pat has been at the forefront of computing his entire life, right? He was one of the people who was working on the x86 and the VAX and then eventually the Pentium when it came out, and has a lot of us research on the dual core. But what was interesting to me was that it was hard for him to even visualize what I was talking about. It's like I need to see a demo for me to understand what you're talking about, because the entire premise of you can now code in English is brand new, quite powerful, and being able to get an application running. And I think the other piece that I wanted to just highlight, which is not just this part about the other pieces that's fascinating me, is also this idea that when I'm writing an app, I don't have to think about maintainability and all those things today. I can write it today, because our biggest fear as programmers our entire lives, if we admitted reality, is that if I do this and I'm going to take on tech debt, that tech debt was a very big thing, right? Like I make something, what if it's going to carry tech debt and it's going to silently and I'll have to pay? I remember those exact phrasing as a consultant, where I would say, well, if you take on tech debt, you'll have to pay interest on it. But what if that debt is so minimal? Then the equations completely change. You might as well just churn something out, take it out, see if anyone uses it, keep tweaking it. Only after you have some confidence that there is actual users is when it becomes worth it to talk about even tech debt. It's not that the tech debt is not there, it's just so minimal that you might as well not worry about it.
Makes sense. Yeah, actually, and this goes back to tech services, kind of like this future of tech services versus software companies. So if we look at human history just from the beginning, right? There is labor and there is capital. Labor is what you do, what you work on. And capital is the assets that you have accumulated that is a stored form of your labor, which you utilize to improve the way you work. And software is a capital. It is an asset that you build through the labor of software development. And what we're basically saying is that the economy now is actually shifting from capital, where you had to have this really well-designed software. This is your Microsoft Word, this is your Microsoft Excel, this is your Trello, this is your whatever. And now the most critical parts of the way we work are not going to be defined by the capital, but they're going to be defined by the labor of what we understand. Hey, this is what I need. I'm just going to create this thing right now and do that.
So I think what you're really getting at is that digital assets have kind of lost value, right?
Yeah.
Is another way of saying it. Basically, if I may put it in real financial terms, right? What you're really saying is we used to build something and it used to appear on our balance sheet.
Well, we used to build something and it was reused. The goal was to get it reused 1 million times.
That is correct.
And now the goal is for one individual to reuse it every day at most.
Let's do the math, right? Like I kind of shared that yesterday at the end of our hackathon at Vixul. I mean, hard math here, right? 10 man hours was spent yesterday. To reclaim those 10 team hours. All we have to do is just save maybe 10 minutes per stand-up, and there's 7 of us, so that's like 70 minutes saved every day. Within 8 or 9 days, the whole investment would have been reclaimed.
So you're actually doing the easy math there, right? And I mean, going back to the way we used to actually really do the math, right? The way we used to do the math for our DevOps world, the actual value math was not the easy math of this is the amount of time saved. The actual value math was this is the reduction in your time to market. So what your idea right now is just talking about, like, oh, we save 10 minutes a day and that accumulates over, so that's 10 minutes of company time. So basically 12 in 2 weeks, we have made up the money, right? But what the real math is that time is not going to get reclaimed, and is not going to get reclaimed by something else. But what it really will do is allow us to elevate the way we do things, to be able to be a lot more strategically aligned, to be able to provide a deeper perspective, and make sure that we are 10 times more effective as a business.
I completely agreed with that. I think that's the outcome chains concept, right? Like the first outcome is you save time, but then there is the secondary, tertiary outcomes that start to show up over a longer period of time. So I guess I am really doing the very simple instant gratification, most leading edge indicator map, right? That the leading edge is, even at the leading edge, we would have saved money. We don't even have to wait for the trailing edge to show up, but the trailing edge is practically guaranteed to show up, and always does when you improve something, if your way of doing things. But I think there's also the other aspect of that let's just say everything we did was wrong and it completely was not going to be useful in 1 month. I mean, those are the kind of arguments we have always given ourselves to not automate, right? One of those arguments was, well, in next month, somebody's going to have done it anyways. Maybe Airtable is going to add those new features. Why are we wasting time building our own interface in front of Airtable if they are going to just add this next month anyways? Well, the thing is, if they add it next month and we delete whatever we created day before yesterday, we're still winning.
So I'm going to do a very complete change on topic, because there was actually a very interesting thing that just happened in the start of it, right? So we were using Replit. All of our data is in Airtable. First thing I do, I go in integrations and look for the Airtable integration. I don't see an Airtable integration. I was like, oh, we don't have one. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Well, let's just tell Replit what I'm trying to make. And I did it. And then I said, oh, okay, yeah, we don't have an integration. I'll just talk to the API directly. And that is actually such an interesting aspect of it. And that we've talked to VCs before who have mentioned that one of the really big reasons for SaaS, that for VC funded companies, is because they have to make, you have to hit this certain threshold. It's not just the product development threshold, but it's also the ecosystem part of the threshold. And if they don't hit the ecosystem part of the threshold, the tool is not able to integrate with the existing client ecosystem. And I just saw that Replit did not have the integration, but we still used it, and we got the integration. We got it to integrate perfectly fine with what we wanted it to do.
I mean, and let's just say for a second that you were not even trying to integrate with Airtable, but rather with some unknown app that Replit had no idea about. Maybe it's an app that I wrote the night before. Mm-hmm. As long as I had created any reasonable API interface, you could literally feed the code into Replit and it could infer the API from it and work with that too. So it's one of the craziest things you can do with like I was installing OpenClaw the other day and I was getting this error, which was coming actually from the OpenAI's API for Codex 5.2. And the traditional method of doing it is, which is exactly how I started. I kind of copy pasted the thing and I went to Google. And I was actually surprised that OpenClaw being such a popular tool right now, I could not find a single reference to anyone saying OpenClaw was having that trouble. But I did find the exact verbiage match, which people were complaining about it in other contexts of Open AI returning this. So what I eventually ended up doing was just doing a git clone of the OpenClaw repository, pointing Claude code at it. And I said, just analyze the repository, tell me what's going on. And it actually analyzed the code, figured out where that error was coming from the logs and the code without me having to understand the code. And what I ended up doing was I ended up changing from my default provider from OpenAPI to Claude, because apparently it was a known error that would start happening with OpenClaw or could happen with OpenClaw. So the idea of taking an existing code base, this goes back to the whole tech debt as well, taking an existing code base and just understanding it used to be such a big art and science for us, right? That was 90% of the job sometimes was either knowing what's there or knowing how to find what's there.
Yeah.
And I have spent countless hours back, I'm talking 15 years ago here, but in grad school, when I used to do performance benchmarking for my thesis, finding that exact line of code that was causing that exact cache miss or that exact performance glitch, that exercise was 90-80% of my time sometimes, because these were And these programs weren't even complex by today's standard, right? This was a program with like 100,000 line stops. There's something like Claude could probably crack that for me within a minute. So the entire task is gone. Now I can actually focus on doing my job rather than being the Sherlock Holmes trying to find that one line of code.
Makes sense. So I think one of the things that is interesting is for tech services, right? If we're going with the thesis that labor is more important than capital, then that actually is a very good position for it to be, for tech services to be in, because it means that the amount of work we do on services that will increase. And if I were to give you credit, that I remember that was the conclusion that you reached in 2023 after playing around with ChatGPT, and that looked like all of this is services work, all of this is custom, and so it is all services work. And you didn't visualize it would be to this extent, but if everything is going to be custom, if everything is going to be services work, there's also the question mark in terms of at what stage does it actually make sense to, while everything is going to be labor, and to some extent tech services companies excel in providing labor and customization, where would the strengths be in that, oh, this is worth it bringing in tech services versus just doing it ourselves?
I think that is actually going to be, so again, everything I think in the world is going to get bifurcated in two areas, right? There is the doers, and then there was the actual work, actual act of doing, actual thinking. So I guess the one way I separate this is that if you were creating knowledge, you're still very much in demand, right? And if you just a consumer of knowledge and using that knowledge to applying it in not even new ways, but in known ways, if you will. For example, looking through a big code base to find that one line of code, there was no knowledge being created there, right? It was just me applying what I already know from somebody else and trying to solve the problem. So it's problems like that I think are going to find alternate solutions through AI. Already are in many cases. Code is just one, but all over the place. Like I guess if I may, but then folks who are so services, I think the way this applies is very clearly those who are actually experts that actually find new users for an existing knowledge, or can create new knowledge, can create new patterns. I think are still going to be in very heavy demand and far more valuable than before.
And I think that's kind of what goes back to what we've been saying regarding positioning and focus, right? That expertise itself is becoming critical. If you don't have that, you're going to find yourself in a very weak position.
Yes, depth I think is going to become more important because breadth is being covered really well by some of these models, the foundation models out there. So just having breadth and just applying it in shallow ways is not going to do anything. You either have to have deep knowledge or have to have the ability to apply knowledge in a very new way, in which both require depth. And depth comes from doing the same thing over and over again, not by doing lots of things or whatever is thrown at you. So that's where the positioning, individual level, company level, comes across the board. I think it's about very deep understanding of something, which really comes from practicing it, being a real practitioner of it over a long period of time.
Awesome. Thank you. So if we were to make takeaways, number one, everyone should be building a few AI apps to get an idea of what that means. Number two, we need to be really developing our expertise and focus and really going deep into that. And number three, we really need to challenge everything about the way we do on a day-to-day basis and see if there's a new way to handle it.
Absolutely. I think that last one I cannot overemphasize. And if there's a 3.5 or a 4 that I would add is that I think people skills are going to become more important, because one of the things that AI will not be able to replace is the human connection. It's the empathy, the feeling that you get when you talk to another human being versus a chatbot. Again, I think this goes back to not if you are just a human being or I can apply it in so many scenarios, right? I'll start with the top of the profession, right? The consultants who just follow a script, not going to be very useful. But if you're genuinely able to understand somebody, offer the empathy, be a very good intent listener, and be able to apply what you know to their current customer's actual problem in a meaningful manner, that is the skill that's going to be very useful. So the point that I wanted to stress was that beyond just the very deep expertise, the other piece of it going to be is human people skills are going to become far more important than before.
Thank you. I think that's actually a very valid shout out. Well, we are out of time right now. So thank you everyone for listening. And I just thank you for your time, Aater, even though this is what we do all the time anyway.
Sure, most welcome. Thank you for your time and questions as well.
Okay.
All right.